Hello everyone and welcome to Slash Film Daily for June 28th, 2018. On today's episode, we'll talk about the latest film and TV news and also go into the mailbag to talk about the title of Spider-Man Homecoming 3. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Senior Writer Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
And writers Hoai-Tran.
Hey everyone.
And Chris Evangelista.
Hello.
Okay, guys, before we get into this, yesterday on the podcast, we didn't have a podcast. We ran my spoiler interview with Colin Trevorrow, and talking about Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. At the end of that interview, I did ask him, because he did make this, he tweeted out a comment to someone that his movie, The Book of Henry, which I still have not seen, is a carbon copy of A New Hope. So, Chris in the Slash Film Slack suggested I ask him about that. And I had one last minute with him in the interview, and I asked him, and you heard the result yesterday on the podcast. We also wrote an article about it on slashfilm.com. Unfortunately, I feel like a lot of people aren't even reading this article. They're just looking at the headline, which is, Colin Trevorrow explains why The Book of Henry is a carbon copy of Star Wars A New Hope, which, yes, very easy to mock. But I think his explanation is fun and interesting. It's not, I think a lot of people are thinking that he's taking this a little bit too seriously. I honestly think it's a party trick for him. Do you know what I mean? It's a joke. And I think he ends it off with that. But the most interesting thing in his answer to me, I think, is the idea that, our foundational myths might be changing, that a lot of people like George Lucas were basing the story archetypes and structures on Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces, and now this generation is basing their foundational myths on the movies they grew up with, the stories that they love, like Star Wars and stuff. And I think that's fascinating. I wanted to hear what you guys thought of this.
I mean, I think his answer makes a sort of sense. I mean, at the very least, I like that he was able to back it up. Like, it wasn't just like some sort of bullshit thing he said on Twitter. Like, he has a legitimate, at least, from his point of view, answer or explanation for it. And, I've said in the past, I'm not a fan of Colin Trevorrow's work in general, except for Safety Not Guaranteed, but I do think his heart is in the right place. He just he tends to stumble over his words maybe a little, and people tend to get a little upset about that online.
I mean, I'm sort of right there with Chris. I really, really enjoy Safety Not Guaranteed, and I also, like Chris, enjoyed the first Jurassic World to some extent and did not enjoy this most recent one. So with all of that said, I think you sort of wrapped it up pretty well there, Peter, in your intro. I mean, it's like he knew that he was sort of going to get raked over the coals for this because of the way the internet works and people don't read the story all the time. But at the same time, yeah, his comment, it makes a lot of sense. So it's a ridiculous thing. So people are going to be like, what the hell is this? And especially, compounded with the fact that he's not a generally well-liked person on film Twitter, of course it's going to generate this response.
My favorite thing, and you could hear it in the audio that we played yesterday, and maybe it doesn't come through in the transcript that was on the site, but when I asked him about this, you could hear the hesitation and all the scenarios playing out in his head and knowing that this is not going to go any good way. HG, any final thoughts?
Yeah, we kind of baited him, didn't we? But he was also the one who put that on Twitter in the first place. I've spent a lot of time dumping on Colin Trevorrow just because I was not a fan of the first Jurassic World. But I do feel kind of bad for him in this case, just because it seems in the interview that he gave that he just seems really passionate about this movie, the quality aside, and he just approach it from sort of like a pure if misguided approach. So I do feel a little bad. I'm like, I'll give you a pass for this one, Colin Trevorrow.
Yeah. And I don't know. I also think that this kind of just shows, the culture that we're in now. A lot of the replies I'm getting on Twitter, clearly they haven't even clicked through and read the quotes. They're just dumping based on the headline alone. But anyways, I just wanted to talk about that briefly. Let's, the other day, they announced the title of Spider-Man Homecoming sequel, which is Spider-Man Far From Home, and we learned from HT that the home word is going to be used in this whole Spider-Man trilogy by Marvel Studios and Sony. So I put it out there, and I was questioning the readers and listeners to, submit their ideas for the Spider-Man Homecoming 3 movie, which would obviously have home in the title in some way. And we got a lot of responses. I wanted to read a couple of them, or a few of them, for you guys here. A ton of people submitted Spider-Man Homeward Bound. I don't think that's going to work. A couple people submitted Spider-Man Homework, but I'm not sure Disney would Disney, name a movie Homework? Who wants to go see a movie called Homework? A couple people suggested Leaving Home, as it could be about him going away to college. Because we know that third film's going to be in his senior year. Although in the comics he went away to Empire State University, which isn't that far. It's in the city, so I don't think that really works. The Movie Planet joked Spider-Man Miles From Home, and spelling Miles like the way you spell Miles Morales. Boss Logic, who does these incredible fan posters, made a fan poster for a movie called Spider-Man Homies, which showed Peter and Miles, which I will link in the show notes. You got to check it out. I got a bunch more. I'm sorry. This is going long. Chase D, who is an avid listener, jokes that it could be Spider-Man Homeschooled, as Aunt May has just had enough of his shenanigans, and she's taking over the teaching duties, and it's all about him trying to find a way to escape and, save the city from crime. Taylor B suggested Spider-Man Homestretch or Spider-Man Home Alone, which I think is interesting because the first Spider-Man Homecoming was so based on John Hughes comedies, so maybe. I don't know. Probably not.
Get Joe Pesci in there as a villain and I'm sold.
Will Wallace, who reads the site, he was a writer for the show Teen Wolf, suggested Spider-Man No Place Like Home, because it would round out the trilogy. I think that is actually pretty solid. And James V jokes Home for Good, because by then Disney will have bought Sony. Probably not. Miles McNutt, who has appeared many times on Slash Filmcast, jokes Spider-Man Home for the Holidays, and it will come out in Christmas 2021. And it should also be noted that Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1 by J. Michael Straczynski was titled Coming Home. So, in the past, Marvel has stolen a lot, or not, adapted many of the titles from the comic books to the movies, even when, the stories really aren't an adaptation of that book. So maybe it could be Coming Home. I want to go quickly to all of you guys. Which of these titles do you think is the most likely or funniest? Ben, we'll start with you.
I kind of like Spider-Man Homeschooled, just because it would get Aunt May more involved, and more Marissa Tomei is always a good thing in my mind.
HT, do you have any thoughts?
I like Miles From Home because that's a nice sort of succession.
That would be cool. It is interesting if you look at the Sony hacked emails. From what I get of it, Disney could make a Miles Morales Spider-Man movie without Sony. At least this is what I read in the emails, and they were even threatening it when they were
threatening it.
Yeah, well, they were threatening if we can't get this deal with Peter Parker and do a collaboration, we might just make our own Miles Morales movie. Now, of course, they can't use Spider-Man in the title of that movie, but it would be interesting because after this trilogy, theoretically, Sony retains the rights to the Spider-Man movies, so maybe introducing Miles Morales in the live-action films in the third of this trilogy gives, Marvel a way to go with this into the future, if Sony decides not to, continue their producing agreement. Chris, what do you have any favorites?
I don't know if I like any of these, but maybe I would go with Spider-Man Home Fries, because home fries are delicious.
I'm not sure how that would work into the story, Chris.
Don't lie. You would go see a film called Spider-Man Home Fries. Everyone would go see it.
What if it's like in the posters, how in Homecoming he was eating a burger, and
right.
The next one he'll be eating, I don't know, a pizza, and then it'll it'll complete the trifecta of just good street food, fries.
Wasn't there a movie called Home Fries with Drew Barrymore? I
think so.
Okay, I'm sorry. We're getting way off topic. Let's get into the news. Let's start off with the most insane, or one of the most insane promotions at San Diego Comic-Con in the history of Comic-Con. Ben, you wrote this up for the site. It involves Demolition Man and Taco Bell.
Yeah, so Demolition Man's 25th anniversary is this year. And for those who don't know, it's a movie that came out in 1993. It stars Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes. And Stallone plays a cop who is framed by Snipes, who plays a terrorist in the movie. And they're both cryogenically frozen. And then Wesley Snipes' villain is sort of awoken in the year 2032. And by that point, society has evolved to the point where violence has no longer been a thing for decades, and the police department is wildly unequipped to handle such a terrorist wreaking havoc on the city. So they, of course, defrost the one man who can take him down, and it's Stallone. It's very ridiculous. It's one of those movies that is somehow terrible and wonderful at the same time. It's really awful, but yet kind of awesome. But anyway, so to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Demolition Man, there's a Comic-Con pop-up coming to San Diego next month, and it involves Taco Bell. And in the movie, this is baked into the plot where Taco Bell is the only movie.
Is that a pun?
Yeah. Basically, yes. Taco Bell is the only fast food franchise to survive what is called the franchise wars in the film. And that means that every restaurant in the future is now Taco Bell, even really high-class places. So Stallone, his character, acts very befuddled when he hears this news, as would anyone. But yeah, that's it's one of the most blatant pieces of product placement I've ever seen in a movie. It's extremely shameless and totally ridiculous, but it's very memorable. That's one of the big things about this movie that people remember, is that, oh yeah, they joke about how Taco Bell is every restaurant in the future. So Warner Brothers is bringing a Taco Bell pop-up to right outside of the convention center in San Diego, and they're going to have free food from 6 p.m. to midnight at this address, and you can find out more about it at slashfilm.com. But Taco Bell also announced that they're bringing back their nacho fries, which they took off the menu earlier this year, and then there's supposed to be nacho fries at this pop-up as well. There might be some sort of bigger Demolition Man reunion planned, because Wesley Snipes is actually going to be at this year's convention. So maybe they could get Stallone or Sandra Bullock, who had a role in this movie when she was an up-and-coming actress. Maybe they'll come and do some sort of surprise panel or something like that. That would be a lot of fun. But yeah, there you go.
And because it's Comic-Con, to get those nacho fries, you'll have to wait in line overnight from the day before. And I'm joking.
They do say that no badge is required to get into this pop-up, so I guess that helps for people who just happen to be in San Diego and are big Demolition Man fans.
Yeah, it's probably going to be mobbed. I assume you're going to have to wait a few hours for this kind of thing. By the way, have you ever heard what you have to do? Like, every year at Comic-Con, Lego gives away minifigs, like these exclusive minifigs that you can't get elsewhere, and they sell for like hundreds of dollars. And you have to wait in line, like, overnight in this line to get a chance to get one. And when in the morning at Comic-Con, they open up the line, and you go up to this button, and you press the button, and it either says yes or no.
Wow.
So you could wait overnight, be first in line, and get that, that red light.
Jeez.
Anyways, I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm getting sidetracked here. By the way, Chris, your Home Fries title, you are not the only person to come up with this. Another a Slash Film reader actually responded, a guy named Doc, and he said it was going to be called Tasty Home Fries, and in which Peter becomes a foodie blogger. Okay, anyways. DC has unveiled a super new digital streaming service, offering more than just original shows. HT, what is going on here?
So DC Entertainment has officially unveiled the details of its new digital streaming service, which is going by the name DC Universe. And as we've been reporting for the past year since it was first announced, it's going to be featuring all sorts of new original live action and animated shows, including Titans, Doom Patrol, Swamp Thing, Young Justice Outsiders, and Harley Quinn. But that won't be the only thing it will be featuring. So in addition to those, that wealth of original shows, which are sure to expand in the coming months, the DC Universe will be offering a deep archive of classic DC movies and TV shows, as well as a comic book reader. A digital comic book reader, to be exact. So this will be launched in the fall of this year, but before it gets officially launched, they are doing some beta testing starting this August, which fans can sign up for through a link that is in the article that I wrote.
This sounds interesting because Marvel has their Marvel Unlimited service, but this seems like it's going to be offering much more than that. And in addition to that, not just comics and shows, but they're like launching like an encyclopedia that will help you kind of like link, arcs in the comic titles, the movies and stuff like that, which is exciting to me because the one thing I feel like that is missing from the Marvel Unlimited app is kind of like an entry point. Like you really don't know where to start. Like I can search Ant-Man and see all the Ant-Man comics in the history that are on that app, but I don't know like what the best starting points are.
Yeah, they're trying to make it like a one-stop shop because there's going to be the encyclopedia, a merchandise shop, and also a fan community forum. So they're basically trying to draw you in and keep you there. Just watch TV shows and movies and read comics all day in this app, which you can also stream on your TV.
Will one of the forums on the forum be the Release the Snyder Cut forum where everybody just like says hateful, evil things to people and uses the hashtag Release the Snyder Cut?
I mean, probably, which would probably be populated by bots just saying release the Snyder Cut to each other, like, endlessly, ad infinitum.
I mean, maybe the fact that you'll have to pay for the service means that they'll not have that, but because I'm assuming a lot of these people would not do that, would not pay to do that. But I could be wrong. Okay, let's move on to Edgar Wright. He has said in the past that he would be up for a Baby Driver sequel. And in a recent post, he teases that it could be coming soon. Ben, what do we know?
Yeah, so this morning, Edgar Wright took to Twitter and tweeted out a poster that says, "Happy Birthday, Baby" on it. And he said, "Baby Driver was released 1 year ago today. I had a wild ride with it in the last 365 days, so I thank you all for your beautiful responses. It means everything. And who knows, maybe he could get back on the road soon, ... So sort of teasing a sequel there. So, yeah, it's been a year. And actually, back in December, Wright was talking about how the deal was being hammered out as we speak. And that was in December. So it seems like this is something, as opposed to Jordan Peele, who we were recently talking about, has not fully committed to making Get Out 2 yet. It seems like Baby Driver 2 is actually going to happen. Wright also said at that point that he was going to at least write a second one. So we're not sure if he's going to come back to direct it yet or not. But I kind of hope that he does. And I have to say, like, after walking out of Baby Driver the first time, I was not really interested in seeing a sequel because I wanted to see what other interesting, original, fresh projects Edgar Wright was going to make. But at this point, I think Baby Driver 2 might actually help because the original movie is now somewhat tainted by the presence of Kevin Spacey. So, all of the sexual assault and harassment accusations that came out against him, and he basically admitting to a lot of them, and he's sort of dropped off the map. So I feel like Baby Driver, it's hard for people to rewatch that movie because of Kevin Spacey's presence. So making a new movie and continuing that cool style of, editing to the music that really identified that first film and made it stand out so well might do wonders for the Baby Driver name, I guess.
See, I feel like I feel like what you felt coming out of the movie. I want Edgar to do another original film, but if he is going to do Baby Driver 2, I want to see it be an all-out musical. Do you know what I mean? I want to see it actually make that huge leap. It was steps. It kind of had a musical element, but I want to see it make the huge leap.
After Ben has talked about it, I'm kind of on board now, just because I do like the characters, and I think that you could do something fun with it. I'm always a fan of Edgar Wright's work, so I probably will watch anything that he does, even a sequel. So, I mean, he's done like unofficial sequels too. So I think if he wants to do it and he has ideas for it, then yeah, I'm on board.
But my question is, like, what would the sequel even be about? Because he kind of has, he didn't want to. I mean, like, it seems like he, getting out of. Spoilers for Baby Driver 2, Baby Driver 1, but getting out of jail, it seems like he would be leaving the life of crime behind. Chris, do you have any ideas for a Baby Driver sequel?
No, I don't really know what that would be. I mean, I'm sure they'll come up with something like, he's forced back into this life, but it just seems a little derivative, so I don't know. But I really don't know. I don't know how I even feel about a sequel to this, because if Edgar Wright's writing it and not directing it, I will definitely have no interest in seeing it, because Baby Driver is only really good because of Edgar Wright's direction. I mean, his direction is what makes that film work for me. If you take him out of the equation, that film is kind of thin. There's not really a lot to it. So it really depends on if he's directing or not. That will interest me.
And I also think, like, now that he has the girl, like, I feel like the motivation for him driving again would have to be, they would have to, quote unquote, fridge her or, kidnap her. And that's not something I want to see happen. But I feel like
here's an idea, Peter. What if the very end of the movie, where it shows them reuniting after prison, is actually just an that was in his imagination? And what if the second film picks up with Lily James's character breaking him out of prison because she's gotten into some sort of trouble and needs his driving skills, and it basically just sort of cuts off the very end of the movie and continues the story from there.
Okay, Ben, you sold me. I'm in. I will use my AMC A-list pass to see this movie.
There you go.
Okay, let's move on to a big story that broke today, and that is that the co-writer of Solo, A Star Wars Story, Jonathan Kasdan, is writing Indiana Jones 5.
So David Coep, who wrote Crystal Skull, and he wrote several other Steven Spielberg films like Jurassic Park and War of the Worlds, was originally supposed to write Indiana Jones 5, but now reports indicate that Jonathan Kasdan, son of Lawrence Kasdan, is writing the script instead. It's not entirely clear what this means. The original report doesn't indicate if they're starting from scratch, if he's just rewriting what David Coep wrote, or if he's just doing a polish. But either way, he's now in charge of the screenplay for the fifth Indiana Jones film. And it kind of brings things full circle, of course, because his father, Lawrence Kasdan, wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first Indiana Jones film. So they're keeping it in the family, so to speak.
Yeah, I know. It seems kind of obvious in that lineage type of way, but I'm wondering, also this film has a release date right now, right?
It'll be out in July 2020 is what they're projecting.
So I would think that this has to be a rewrite of David's script. I liked Solo, A Star Wars Story, and I liked Jonathan Kasdan's directorial debut, which I saw at Sundance a few years back. I have faith in it, although Solo does sometimes go for more obvious things. I'm hoping that Kasdan doesn't bring that to Indy.
It's so hard to judge Solo because there was so much turmoil in terms of what was going on behind the scenes in that movie, and it's hard to know who brought what to it exactly. But like you, Peter, I saw The First Time, which is Jonathan Kasdan's directorial debut. I think it came out in like 2012 or something, and I really liked that movie. So I definitely am excited about him coming on board to write this. I think that it's got to be better than Crystal Skull, which is a movie that I really don't care for. I know it has some defenders online, and those numbers seem to have grown in recent years, but I can't bring myself to enjoy that movie as much as I really try. So I feel like there's nowhere to go but up.
HT, do you have any thoughts on this?
I'm not sure what to think yet, just because Jonathan Kasdan is still pretty untested. He's still kind of in the shadow of his father, so to speak. So, and only one place to go is up after Crystal Skull, and I was severely disappointed in that film. So hopefully it'll be better off.
Yeah, David Cope has been hit or miss for me. I mean, sure, he did do Jurassic Park, but he also wrote, I think, The Lost World, maybe even Jurassic Park 3. No, he didn't do Jurassic Park 3. He wrote the original Mission Impossible. He did War of the Worlds, the original Spider-Man, Jack Ryan, Shadow Recruit, Angels and Demons. So it's all over the place. So, you know, I'm happy seeing someone new getting a chance to lend their voice to this franchise. And I don't know. One thing, I'm not sure if everybody here has read this, but there was like this transcript of this original story group that got together to basically come up with the idea of Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark and basically create Indiana Jones. And it was Steven Spielberg, Lawrence Kasdan, and George Lucas. There might have been someone else in that group, but like the transcript is online. It's like this 40-page thing. And it's just like this great thing where like, you know, we need him to be afraid of something. What could he be afraid of? What about snakes? And it's just like, it's almost like being in the room as you're seeing one of the most iconic characters in the history of cinema being created. It'll be linked in the story by the time you hear this. But let's move on from Indiana Jones to Facebook. Facebook is testing an algorithm that will protect all of us from spoilers. HG, what do we know? So
earlier this year, it was reported that Facebook was planning to introduce a spoiler filter to its newsfeed to protect avid TV watchers and movie watchers from the spoilers that will inevitably flood their feeds after the latest Game of Thrones episode comes out, or Avengers Infinity War gets a million articles written about it months after the movie's release, but yet we still get yelled about it. Anyways, Facebook is now testing that algorithm that will protect, allows you to filter out keywords from that are tied to spoilers from your feed. So, for example, it's called Keyword Snooze. And if you want to avoid spoilers for the end of Avengers Infinity War, you would simply block out the term Avengers Infinity War ending, and all posts or headlines that you may mock later on will get blocked from your feed for 30 days. So for now, there's only a limit of 30 days, but there probably will be more features added as they test this out.
So this is good for TV shows. So like if the end of Westworld is coming up or Game of Thrones, you could put Game of Thrones or Westworld in there and kind of snooze from that. I mean, this is something that Twitter has had for a while now. So is there any difference here?
Not really. It looks very much like the Twitter mute options, in which you can just mute certain words and those tweets won't appear on your timeline at all. Although this is temporary as opposed to Twitter, which you have to manually control it.
I still don't understand why Twitter and Facebook have not come up with a spoiler tag or like some kind of way of, a hashtag that will like make the text that follows that hashtag invisible unless you click on it. Like that just seems like such an easy thing to do in the UI. And I feel like, I know there are a lot of jerks out there, but for the most part, people in my feed are considerate, and I think they would use such a thing. But I don't know. Maybe that is not in their benefit. They want more people talking, and hiding content is probably not in their benefit. Let's talk about another big bit of news that hit today, and that is that the Steven Spielberg produced Halo TV series is coming to Showtime and starts filming in 2019.
Yeah, so Showtime announced today that they are adapting the mega popular Xbox video game series Halo into a TV show, and it's going to start production early next year. Kyle Killen, who is the showrunner of shows like Awake and Lone Star, is going to executive produce, write, and serve as the showrunner. And Rupert Wyatt, who directed Rise of the Planet of the Apes, is going to direct multiple episodes of this show. Showtime, right out of the gate, ordered 10 hour-long episodes for its first season, and it's going to basically just be an adaptation of the the popular video game, where it says let's see. In its adaptation for Showtime, Halo will take place in the universe that first came to be in 2001, dramatizing an epic 26th century conflict between humanity and an alien threat known as the Covenant. Halo will weave deeply drawn personal stories with action, adventure, and a richly imagined vision of the future. So this is pretty big news, because a Halo show we've seen some like digital features, like web series and some live action stuff in the Halo universe before, but nothing on this scale. David Nevins, who's the president and CEO of Showtime, said that this is going to be the network's most ambitious series ever, which seems like a pretty big statement considering they just aired David Lynch's Twin Peaks: The Return. So yeah, this is going to be a pretty big deal when it comes out.
Okay, the weird thing here is that this is Showtime. Like, this is the network that does Billions and Homeland and The Affair. I mean, I know that this is going to have a bigger budget than those shows, but I just wouldn't think of Showtime as being the place for a video game, sci-fi show.
I mean, I would not have guessed that they would be the home for this either. But like I said, Twin Peaks: The Return is one of the craziest, most ambitious, sort of like most visionary pieces of television that I've seen, I think, in my life. And Showtime, devoted the time and money to David Lynch for him to get that done. So maybe they're trying to, step it up in a big way. I feel like, this is definitely going to get them a hell of a lot of new subscribers, and that's got to be what they're aiming for, right?
Yeah. I mean, but even Twin Peaks is in their like wheelhouse. It's like this elevated, stuff that appeals to more intellectual audiences. I just feel like this is so out of their wheelhouse, and I feel like, the creative executives at Showtime, this, do they even play Halo? Like, I feel like, I feel like the people that, program this network would I don't know.
I'm as baffled as you are, Peter. I don't really know what this show is going to look like now that it's on Showtime. Maybe it'll be something else entirely, and we are just have our own ideas about what Halo is.
Well, all these networks are looking for their own Game of Thrones, and that's what they're trying to position this as. If they can succeed, I am a little skeptical. Let's move on to Stephen King. We're in the King-assance, and the Boogeyman will visit your closet with help from A Quiet Place writers. Chris, what do we know?
So The Boogeyman is a short story by Stephen King, and as we all know now, thanks to 2017's It, which was a big box office hit, studios everywhere want in on this Stephen King action. So more and more novels and short stories are being greenlit as films or remakes or TV shows, and this is the latest one. And Scott Beck and Brian Woods, who wrote A Quiet Place, are going to write the screenplay for this. I mean, that's the gist of it. I've read this story like I've read most Stephen King stories, and it's good, and it's pretty creepy, but it's also very short, so I'm not really sure how they're going to make it a movie. They're going to have to expand on it a lot, but if done right, this could be pretty creepy.
Well, some of the better Stephen King movies have been based on short stories, but not this short. Do you think the writers of A Quiet Place are the right people to tackle this?
I think they are, because A Quiet Place is a very well-written screenplay. It's almost airtight, I would call it. So I have faith they can pull this off.
Okay, let's move on to our last and final story, and that involves the Top Gun sequel. Maverick is looking to cast the son of Goose. Ben, you wrote this up for the site. What do we know?
Yeah, so the Hollywood Reporter came out with a story that says the search for one of Top Gun Maverick's new stars has been narrowed down to 3 actors. They're looking to cast the son of Goose, who was played by Anthony Edwards in the original movie, and he was Tom Cruise's wingman, his RIO. I don't remember exactly what that stands for, Radio Information Officer or something. He's basically like the guy in the back of the jet, in the fighter jet. And so Miles Teller, Nicholas Hoult, and Glenn Powell are the 3 up-and-coming actors who are in contention for this part of the son of Goose. So we saw this character very briefly as a young child in the original movie that came out in 1986. Meg Ryan plays the mom, so maybe she could come back in some capacity. We know that Tom Cruise is coming back. Obviously, Joseph Kosinski, who directed Cruise in Oblivion, is directing this film, and we know that Val Kilmer's Iceman is also coming back, so it seems like it's going to be a big reunion in that regard. I mean, personally, I feel like Glenn Powell is probably the best fit for this character, even though we don't know from this report what exactly, what kind of role this is going to be. It seems like it's a hotly contested part, so it seems like it's going to be more than just a quick cameo kind of thing. So I like Glenn Powell a lot. I think he has that easygoing vibe that Anthony Edwards had in the original, and he has a lot of range. You know, we've seen him in like Everybody Wants Some, and he was just in that Netflix rom-com Set It Up, I think it's called. I haven't seen that one yet, but it's in my queue. Nicholas Hoult, who's been in like the X-Men movies, would probably be my second choice, and Miles Teller would be a very, very distant third place for me. But I sort of fear that Miles Teller might actually be the one who gets this part, because he recently worked with Joseph Kosinski, the director of this film, on a firefighter movie called Only the Brave that came out last year. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, Son of Goose coming to Top Gun 2.
You know, I was such a fan of Miles Teller, but he's become so obnoxious to me for some reason. And I feel like in the role of Goose, who is kind of the sidekick character, I feel like he would be overwhelming. He's not a good sidekick.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat as you. I was a fan of Miles Teller back in Whiplash, but his just persona became really obnoxious and grating, and I think he would definitely swallow the role whole. And so I like Glenn Powell a lot. I think that's also my first choice. Miles Teller maybe could redeem himself. I don't know. I think Nicholas Hoult is kind of just a little bit bland. I'm not really sure what he could do with it, but yeah, I think that those two would be my choices, I think.
Yeah, bland is the best word to describe him. But we have hit the end of Slash Film Daily for today. I'll put this at the front here. If you guys are enjoying this podcast, please go to iTunes, give us a rating, give us a review, give us 5 stars. We could use it. It helps spread the word and get us out there. If you want to find this podcast, you can find it every weekday, published on Slash Film and on all the popular podcast apps. That includes iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, Spotify. Please feel free to send us your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. And like today, sometimes we use it on the show. And spread the word. Tell your friends. We'll see you tomorrow.